Hey everybody. Alright, time for the next one. So this is part 2 of many to come, I think. I did a video a few days ago where I tried to go over some of the basics. Realized as soon as I finished that I missed a bunch of things that I had intended to include, as I'm sure is going to be a running theme of this series. So I've got some things that I want to cover over from last time. Also, I took some time in-game. I'm still on the demo server to make myself some cash. Making cash on the demo server is super easy, so I have 42 million quanta now, which is a good chunk of change. And yeah, I'm going to just pull up my notes about what I feel like I missed last time. So, first of all, apologies, the audio from the game wasn't loading in properly. OBS missed it for some reason, so I think I got that sorted now. Next thing I wanted to go over was tile searching. So if you are starting a new character, starting on Haven, and you're trying to join someone who you know is playing the game, I wish I had done this during the actual intro, but the map interface is very similar in-game versus what it is there. So here, you can actually search for a user. So here, this is Dimitri J. So I'm going to go here and just spin over somewhere else. And then here, you can actually go and search for a person. And then you have to actually hit an arrow in order to go to their territory. And it will just snap to where their territory is. So if you have a friend who's already started, they're already on Haven, and they say they've got room next to them, when you're going to pick your tile, you can actually just come here, do this, search for it. Also helpful going forward, if you, say, know that your org has tiles on a different planet or something, you can just search for them. Very handy. You got a friend who you know set up a tile somewhere, just go, do the search, find their stuff, works well. Another thing I forgot to mention is this here. This is my compactified ship for, yeah, like my pocket rocket. So this is the ship that I started that I made a few modifications in the last video. And then I compactified it into my inventory, and it's still there. And it will actually stay there even if I die. So even if I'm flying a bigger ship and I crash and I die and I respawn somewhere else, I will still have this ship on me wherever I end up. Which honestly is super handy. I strongly advise everyone to always have some sort of pocket rocket on them. Personally, on the main server, on my main character, I've got a pocket rocket that can handle almost 2,000 kilometers an hour in atmosphere. It's just a little stick, basically. It doesn't look like much, but it gets me around real fast. So if I crash and respawn back on Haven or Alioth and I need to get somewhere on that planet, I can just pull out my pocket rocket and just zip there real fast. So yeah, strongly advise doing that. One thing I mentioned, I often, when I'm trying to equip things, so if I'm trying to like equip the fuel or whatever, I right click and hit equip. And same thing with here, right click and hit equip. Technically you can just double click things, but I don't often do that because this game has a lag problem sometimes. And if your game is lagging, if your frame rate is lagging, you can end up double clicking on something and it won't register, because it has to register the click on a frame and then a certain amount of time between that and the next click, and then that click has to be on a different frame as well. So if you end up clicking them on like 2 frames back to back, it doesn't register as a double click. It's frustrating. So sometimes I'll be trying to do something and trying to double click, and I just can't, because I'm just in a populated area and it's really laggy. So I've started to build the habit of just right click, equip. I've also started to build the habit of, just because it's faster, when I'm going to get into a ship, you can just look at the pilot seat and hit F and wait for it to activate. You can also right click and hit pilot, and it's like right there. And same thing to get
System shutdown complete.
So I've built the habit of doing that just because it's a lot faster to get in and out of my ship. Doesn't really matter, but something to be aware of. So there's that. Blueprints. I mentioned briefly the difference between a compactified ship and a blueprint, but I didn't really get into that. So here I want to show you. So this ship here, I made some modifications. So you see I've got the engines on the back and the wings and all that jazz. I can actually now take this and right, you have to be in build mode to see the option. So you have to hit B on it. Right click, construct, create core blueprint. Now there's two options. There's create core blueprint and create core blueprint without write protection. So basically a core blueprint by default will have DRM on it. And the DRM basically locks this construct that's designed to the owner. So if I were to take some of this voxel work and try and copy and paste it off of this ship, right now it's not DRM locked, so I can do that. But if I make this core blueprint and then make a blueprint off of that, which you do by right-clicking here, this is the core blueprint, so you can just create copies off of this. So I can just create like 100 copies and be like, boom, now I can make 100 of these ships that I just made. So if I were to then equip one of these and deploy it, if I had the parts for it, which I don't, when it comes out, you see here it says the creator is Ophelia. Now this is DRM enabled now because I didn't make a DRM free copy, which means that if I then go into build mode on that ship after I make it, I can no longer copy things, like copy voxel work off of that ship onto another ship. Right now I can take this, I can copy it, I can go to a different ship and I can paste it and have that design. And also things like the code that's in the pilot seat. That I can open this up and I can look at the code and I can edit it because I have rights to that because it's not write protected. But on the copy it would be, so I wouldn't be able to actually edit the code that's on there. So that's just something to be aware of for how blueprints work. Another thing I wanted to mention is starting in the game, the T1 ore is an easy way to make money to start, but it was nerfed pretty hard. They don't have bots for it anymore, so the price that you can get for the ore that you have is dropping pretty low. Often you find you can't get more than about 5
System shutdown complete.
Whereas before it used to always be up to like 25, so it was a nice, easy money-making mechanic for early in the game. But not anymore. So on the demo server, however, it's selling for 2,500 quanta per liter. Hence, I'm a multi-millionaire and it only took me a couple of minutes. So I bought this ship from the UEF store, just as a basic sample thing to try out. I don't actually advise buying basically any ships from the UEF store. Cost-wise, they're not really worth it. You can really get blueprints from other players and materials and parts for the ships.
Landing gear raised.
To make much better ships, much cheaper. So I did this here because we don't have our blueprints here. Like even the ones that I myself have, they don't carry over to the demo server. So I don't have access to any of the real player build stuff. I could make something real quick, but it would look like garbage and it would take me a little while, and honestly, the ships are super cheap to buy, so I bought this one here. There is one exception to that.
Brake landing engaged. Landing gear deployed.
I do sometimes advise
System shutdown
if you're ever
complete.
in a situation where you end up on Haven, that you are actually living on a different planet at that point. So myself, I moved to Thades fairly early on, so I was living on a different planet right off the get-go. And I forgot to set a resurrection node on Thades. So I crashed a ship, died, and ended up back on Haven. And I am ashamed to admit this happened multiple times. So I actually have a few of this ship. This is the Exacutus SE, if I recall correctly. Yes. So it's only 345,000 quanta, which is, it's a bit. That's like, it's a bit of cash. But it is a nice ship. It's super easy to fly. You can almost just point straight up and fly out of the atmosphere to escape Haven. There is a cheaper one, which is the nanobike, which I think looks cuter, but it's actually a lot harder to fly. It's a much less powerful ship, so getting out of atmosphere on Haven or Alauth is actually a little bit difficult with it. So I don't, much as this one is cheaper, if you're a new player, I don't advise trying to use this ship. just because, yeah, getting it off of the planet where you get it, by definition, because you can only buy them on Haven and Alioth Sanctuary, is going to be hard. So yeah, the Exacutus is a good choice for that. Okay, got that. Another thing I want to mention is there is a bonus that you get for having two-factor authentication. So two-factor authentication, it's basically just you get an app on your phone. You know the drill. It gives you a code. You log in. It only asks you once every like 90 days, I think, for logging into the system. So it's not too obtrusive. And you get an extra 1,000,000 talent points, and I think 500,000 quanta just for setting it up. And when you're just starting, that's actually a pretty big deal. So I strongly advise anyone who's just starting in the game to set up the two-factor authentication because the bonus is worth it. Talent queuing. I went ahead here to show you this thing and just queued up a bunch of stuff when I did the other video. But one thing that I didn't mention is something that I strongly advise is to do breadth first queuing, basically. So here I was focused on getting all of these things. So right now my atmospheric fuel efficiency is leveling up to level 4 before I even start on the thrust control level 1. I strongly advise you, if you have a bunch of stuff that you need to do, to always do the level 1s first, if you can. Because honestly, they'll go so fast, and there's diminishing returns. The higher up in the tree you go, the more expensive it's going to get for each level. But the level actually gives you the same benefit, it's just 5 times more expensive. So I strongly advise you to always do the 1s, then the 2s, then the 3s, then the 4s. Because like if I had done that before, this thing has already sunk over 60,000 points into it, and that would have given me like half of these just by itself, just for what I put into this one skill, not to mention the level 3 before it, right? Like I could be up to level 3 in basically all of these for the little amount of level 4 that I've gotten on this one. So particularly if you're going to want to be doing a lot of things, so like airfoil maneuverability, airfoil optimization, this one requires level 2, the other one. Level 1 versus level 2 is not really a big deal. It's like, hang on, let's see. So it's basically like an hour instead of 10 minutes often is sort of the kind of scale that you're talking about. So if you have to get something up to level 2 in order to get the next thing, that's not so bad. But here, this one, of course, led me into the trap of putting level 1 in it, and it gave me level 4 in a different one. So this one I would hold off until later. Just do 1 for now. And then go down to the next thing, and put a point in there, yada yada. So it takes a little while to set it up, but it means that instead of it being like a week later and you've gotten one skill really good, but the other skills you haven't even started yet, a week later you'll have all of your skills a little bit okay, and start working on it from there. So that's my general advice for queuing talents. Other thing I was going to say is the deploy tools. So I mentioned when I was going over the tools that 5 is the deploy ground element tool for me, and 8 is the deploy construct tool. So just quick description there. Deploy construct is for deploying blueprints, basically. So if you're deploying a blueprint of a ship, the deploy construct tool is the tool that you want. Deploy ground element is for deploying territory units and cores, which will become a construct. But if you're deploying just the core, you actually want the deploy ground element tool. So in fact, I'm going to actually just quickly head over to the market here and grab a core just to show you. That said, I never remove those tools from my bar. They're always there. And I never really just select them, because you don't really need to. God, I could type. Okay, so we're just going to quickly buy one of these. Another thing on the demo server, there's a ton of stuff, super cheap. So like a dynamic core would normally cost a lot more than 32 quanta. But they've just seeded the environment with the ability to buy a bunch of stuff. So like if I wanted to go in here and buy like a space engine XL, it would only be basic, and I'd need to spell engine correctly. it's like 542 quanta. And to get something like that in game, it would be like hundreds of thousands of quanta. So not only do you acquire funds at a rate that's like more than 100 times faster, but the stuff is also more than 100 times cheaper. So your overall rate of progression on the demo server is like 10,000 times faster. But there's some stuff that you can't do, right? So like in here, one thing they don't sell is warp cells. So you literally can never warp in the demo server because you can never get the cells to do it. Also, they don't sell higher tier engines, and there's just not enough time to build a factory to make them. So you can only really make ships with basic stuff. Anyways, here. So if I want to deploy the Novark Racer from my blueprint, you'll see it highlighted tool 8, just deploy construct. But if I want to just deploy a core, it goes to deploy ground element. Honestly, hardly ever comes up, because for the most part, this is how you do it. You just open this up, click on this, and it selects the tool for you. Just make sure you don't take it off your hotbar, otherwise it'll tell you you can't do it. Another important thing is checking your inventory. So here, I can't do it because I don't have permission from the owner. But if I point it at my own ship, yeah, so this basically, I'm trying to deploy it off of the marketplace, and I don't have permission to do that from Ophelia. But if I point it at my own ship, I can deploy it on there. But only because the core is in my nanopack. Something else to watch for is which inventory you have selected. So if I hit Control-I, that switches to my linked container. And I don't have a core in my linked container, so it just turned red because I can't do that because I don't have a core. So if I click it, it says elements not available. You'll also get the element not available warning if something was damaged and you're trying to deploy a full copy of it, or if it has some sort of dynamic properties on it. So like if I have a programming board that has a program on it and I pull it off, and then I go to put a programming board on a ship, but I just say like put a programming board on the ship, it won't work because this is not just any programming board, it is that specific one that has the code on it. If you run into that, you can just click it and click this button here, which is remove dynamic properties. And that will delete the code off of it and make it a generic item. Sadly, you can't do that with damaged items. So damaged items always have to be placed individually. So if you want to build a ship out of damaged parts, you have to literally open up your inventory, select I want this part, place it on the ship. Then open up your inventory and say, now I want this part, and place it on your ship. Whereas if you're using full health elements, you can just click, 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 click. I'll get into more of that shipbuilding stuff later, maybe today even. That's most of the stuff that I missed. The only other thing I wanted to say is join an org. Look through the Discord, try and find people who are recruiting. It's such a big difference to your gameplay. Like I can't. It's difficult to describe just how different it is. Not all orgs are created equal. So, you know, like take a look through and try and find something that matches your style and what you're interested in doing. But having people there who already know the game is like so vital for that kind of support. Also having people who already have certain talents. So like here, if you look in this thing here, atmospheric flight technician, as an example, there's this ability here, atmospheric engine handling, which gives 10% extra to max thrust when you deploy an engine. So if you had this at level 5, an engine would be literally 50% stronger. And if you had this one at level 5 as well, that's another 10% stronger. And I'm pretty sure it's multiplicative, so you're looking at like almost a 70% gain in the thrust of your engines if you place them with these skills. But it's going to take you like a month to train those two skills, which is a long time. But if you're in an org, the odds are very good that someone, like me, will have already taken the time to do that. So on my main character, that was like literally the first thing I did. I rolled her up, I did my link container distance range, like I always say to do first, and then I just queued up all of these skills, all of these ship placement skills. So my space engines, atmospheric engines, hover engines, fuel tanks, all that jazz, is all maxed out. So if I go and touch a ship, I can make it basically as good as it can be. And there's one button that you can do to do that. You just walk up to the ship, say construct, and reapply talents on construct. And then, boom, it now has whatever the best skills are that you have. you do need to have build rights to do that. It's basically like taking the things off and putting them back on again. You're basically like rebuilding the ship. They've just made it in a single button click. It wasn't always that way. Be grateful they added that button click. We used to have to actually literally rip the whole ship apart to apply those talents, and it was a nightmare. Also, sometimes they can rescue you. I've definitely had times where I've crashed or where one of my workmates has crashed, and we just hop on our Discord and just like, dude, I messed up. So I had like one where I crashed into one of the Thades moonlets, and someone just showed up with some scrap in just a few minutes later, ready to go and help me fix the ship. Done and done. It's super handy having that kind of resource group. Okay, so I've covered a little bit about money making. I mentioned how much T1 ore sells for. It's really entirely market driven, so like T1 ore sells for whatever people are willing to pay for it. Because there are no bots on that anymore. It's literally just other players who need ore will offer to buy it from you. There are only three other ways. Well, there are only 3 ways total that money actually comes into the game. One, every day when you log in, you get 100,000 quanta. Sadly, it's not on a calendar basis. It's literally on a, has it been more than 24 hours since the last time you logged in and got this bonus basis. So if I log in at 8 o'clock one day and I get my bonus, and then I log in again the next day at 7:55 because I got in a little earlier, I won't get the bonus. I have to, at some point, past 8, log out and log back in order to get the bonus. But say I don't think about that until 9, the next day, I'm not going to be able to get that bonus until 9. And then the next day, I don't log in until noon because I didn't think of it. Then the day after that, I can't get the bonus until noon. So you will gradually lose those daily login bonuses. Even if you're on every single day, even if you try and time it properly, you will gradually drift out and lose a day or more if you're not careful. And it's not just being online. Like, even if you just log in 5 minutes beforehand and leave yourself online, doesn't cut it. You have to log in back in. So that's the daily login bonus. The second way is challenges. So there are 2 things in the game that you can get to from any VR pod, which are challenges. So let me go inside here. So here. Looks like there's only one right now. I think there was a bug in the other ones. They shut it down. So this is the space delivery challenge. They are buggy. Like the air delivery challenge is currently not available because it was so buggy. The space delivery challenge can be a little bit buggy as well. Collectively, if you do both of them, and it looks like you can do it once every 18 hours, it would give you about 500,000 quanta, which, like, it's a good hefty bonus. And if you are really good and well practiced at it, you can do each one in like 20 to 30 minutes, maybe even less if you really know what you're doing. But it takes time and practice to get that good at it. And sometimes you hit a bug and you can't finish it, and then it was just wasted time. So I don't really do those because I just find them frustrating when it breaks on me. Hopefully at some point they sort out the bugs and stabilize that. But right now that's the state of it. So that is one of the other ways that money comes into the game. And the last way that money comes into the game is missions. So if you hit F8, or if you do the tab and look down here, I think it's this one is missions, and then hit the hour or the magnifying glass to search for missions. There's 2 types. There's 2 types of missions. So these are the basic repeatable ones, the classic ones. Of these, there is one that literally one mission to rule them all, aileron parts. If you sort by reward here, which you can do, you see that aileron parts has a reward of 180,000. I think that's wrong. I think actually on the live server, I think they dropped it down to 160,000. It's still the best, but I think it's a little bit less than that now. And its volume is only 10 kiloliters, and I say only 10 kiloliters, but be aware, your nanopack can only hold 4 kiloliters. I think 5 if you totally boost it. and it only weighs 15 tons. So it's not that bad to haul one of those around. You do need a ship. You can't just do it with a pocket rocket. You need a ship that actually has some storage in it. You need at least a small container. I think a small container unboosted is only 8,000. So if you had it properly boosted, one small container could do it. But you're probably going to want two. Or if you want to carry parts for more than one person, you'll need more space. And then there's the special missions. Now, the special missions pay a lot more. As you'll notice, those are millions of quanta on the side. But you have to go a lot further, and the thing's a lot heavier. And sometimes you have to leave the safe zone. So these ones here, all of them, they generate a different set every day at 1400 UTC. Is that right? I'm not sure that's right. That's what it says, but I'm not sure that's right. But regardless, they do reset every day. You get a different set when they reset. When you pick up a quest or a mission, you then have 24 hours to complete it. Even if that goes over the reset time, that's okay. It's literally just from the point where you say, yes, I'm going to do this one. You have 24 hours to get there, pick it up, fly it over to the other one, and drop it off. And often the flights are long. So you see here the rides here, like this is 355 SU. So that's going to take you a couple of hours to make that flight. And there are longer ones. Like that's just that's one of the shortest ones, right? But if I pull this open, carbon scrap shipment, basically this is to fly from Mattis to Tioma. So I'm going to open up the map, which I haven't really shown off yet. If you go to the system map, you can see here, this is Mattis, so this is where the pickup point is, and this is Tioma, so that's where the drop-off point is. So you can see there it is indeed 355 SU, and this little ball here is the safe zone bubble. So anything in here, you cannot get shot. So as long as you stay within this bubble, you don't have to worry about PvP. You only have to worry about crashing into things. Once you leave that bubble, then you do have to be worried. Because there be pirates there, and they will kill you. The pirates are just other players. There's no NPCs or anything. So yeah, Mattis to Tioma is a very unsafe flight. Normally, if you want to go to Tioma, what you can do is you can just warp there. It's expensive. Warp cells are very expensive. So like even if you try and give like a very bare bones ship that has like next to nothing on it, just enough to get out of the atmosphere, warp over there, and come back, that trip is gonna cost you a few 100,000 quanta in warp cells. So, you know, make sure it's worth it, I guess. Okay, so that is the three methods of making money in the game. I mean, obviously, you can make money other ways, but somehow, at some point, that's how the money got in the game. Someone did that. So you can design ships and sell blueprints. You can hire out your services. You can like mine for other people. Even just mining and selling the ore on the auction house is what I do. Auction house, the marketplace. When you do that, like someone else is buying it because they want to put it in their factory to make elements with it. But they must have gotten money from someone who did one of those three things. And realistically, mostly missions, because they make so much more money than the other things. Like, that's where the vast majority of the quanta in game comes from. Another thing you can do to make some easy cash is schematics. Sorry, pardon me. So, if you hit K, this is your crafting menu. So when you're first starting off the game, you want to make some basic things. So say you want to do something super basic, like just make scrap. To make scrap, you would need to make aluminum, pure aluminum. If you want to make aluminum scrap, you need pure aluminum. Pure aluminum is made from bauxite. So if you click here, it shows you need 65 liters of bauxite to make 45 liters of pure aluminum. And then from pure aluminum, you need 50 liters of pure aluminum to make 50 aluminum scrap. Interesting trick here, and this is something that will catch even some experienced players, because I only discovered this recently. You can actually middle click on this to open up tabs. So you can actually have different things going here and flipping between them. So if you want to do something a little bit more advanced, like say, like I want to make a data bank. It's not that much more advanced, but it's a little bit advanced. So if I click on data bank, I know that I'm going to need a basic component and basic processor. I can do this. Basic component, basic processor. Now in the basic component, I can say, oh, I need ALFE. And the basic processor, oh, I also need ALFE. So I know that I need 10 for that one and 6 for that one. So I know I'm going to need 16. And then you can sort of nest down from there. And like here, I'll need a fixation, and you're going to need 4 of these. So I'm going to make 4. And you can literally just add this to the queue, and add this to the queue, and add one of these to the queue, and add one of these to the queue. And then add one of these to the queue. And then as soon as I get the parts for this fixation, so I need 4 of them, so if I go polycarbonate product, this makes 75, so I can just make 1 batch of that, drag it up to the top. Then if I had this stuff, once it started crafting that, it would just work its way through this list and make them all. But some things you cannot make in your nanopack. So if you want to do something more advanced, so say if I wanted to say a basic space engine S. So this is just a basic little space engine, something that only works in space, as the name implies. But there are actually higher tiers of it. So this is all made with basic elements, which means it's all made from T1 ores. If I were to go and just search for Space Engine S and remove Show Nanocraftable Only, it's going to show me all of them. So here, if I were to say, what about an advanced freight Space Engine S? So this is a freight engine, so it's going to be lighter. It's going to take more time to spool up, but it consumes a lot less fuel and it weighs a lot less. Very cool. But in order to make it, you see this down here, it says schematic required for industry, and if you mouse over this little eye, it says you need a Tier 3 S element schematic copy. So now we're going to go look at the schematics. So if I close this out and hit Control K instead of K, you would need for that this, the Tier 3 S element schematic copy. So in this interface, you can just say 1, start. Cost me 46,875 quanta to start that, to make 1 batch of 5 of them. But you can actually sell those on the market too, because people who are running factories, they need schematics, so they will pay you a premium for them. And as with most other things in this game, there is also actually a skill for that. It's new though, and I don't remember where it is. Is it in the industry? Schematic industry, here we are. So you can actually get more slots for researching, or for doing schematics. So here, there's only 5 slots, so I can do this 5 times, and then I can't do any more because I don't have any more slots. But what you can do is you can make more within a slot, it's going to take longer. So this will be done in 2.5 hours, but if I was like, whatever, I'm not going to be on until tomorrow anyways, I could be like, let's just do like 4, that'll be 10 hours, we'll do that. And then in 10 hours, it'll be done, all of those ones. So that would be 20 of them, which is kind of nifty. But you see it was 46,875. So now if I go here and say schematic cost optimization, this requires this one. So if I go and train this, and train this, and train this, and train this, wait for it to lag out on me for a second, and then pop back in here. Now, if I select it, now it says 42,188. Also, if you noticed, it didn't update right away. I still had it selected, and so it still had the other thing. This is actually kind of a common bug in this game. A lot of different interfaces don't necessarily update right away until you change something. So another example of that is the Deep Space Asteroid Tracker. This is somewhat of an advanced example, but if you're searching for an asteroid and someone else finds it, it becomes discovered. And when it becomes discovered, or rather when it becomes broadcast, it basically lets anyone in the game who has a DSAT know exactly where it is. They don't have to go through the hunt anymore. But if you were in the middle of a hunt on it, you stay in the middle of that hunt. It doesn't update to tell you where it is. You have to keep going through the steps of the hunt. Unless you quit the hunt, select a different asteroid, say, I want to hunt for this one instead, and then select the one that was broadcast and say, actually, just tell me where that is. Then you can find it that way. But you have to actually leave that hunt in order to be able to tell where it is. Much like here, I had to actually select something else and then come back. I've also heard there's a bug here, which I haven't tested myself, but I can now. It says that costs 42,188, but when I queued it, it cost 46,000. Now, if I cancel this, I'm pretty sure, yeah, it only refunded me 42,000 quanta. So if you started queuing something and then you get the skill to increase or to decrease the amount that it costs, if you cancel it, you lose the difference. So that's just straight up quanta lost there. You can actually check that. If you hit O and go to, that brings up your wallet, and then you go to the log, you can see how much you spent on different things. So you see there, I paid 46,875 to queue it, and I was refunded 42,188 for canceling it. Just flush that money right down the drain. So, something to watch out for. The next major thing that I wanted to go over for today is flying. I've already run longer than I wanted to, but I want to get this out there. So, something that was an absolute game changer for me, and I so strongly advise it, is get a HUD. The default HUD, I don't mean to be insulting, it's garbage. It's hot garbage. The controls are terrible. It doesn't handle well. It's not great. So this here, this is Arches. This is what I use primarily at this point. It's got a built-in autopilot. It's got all kinds of built-in features. But even just the very basics. Like here, I hit G, I take off. I hit G, I land. I don't have to touch anything else. And it actually stays on the ground when I land. Now I can just get out, hit F, right-click.
System
G,
shutdown
whatever,
complete.
and I'm on the ground. All I had to do was hit G. If you've done much flying with the basic default HUD, you'll know it's not that easy. It also has a built-in speed limiter, so if you make a ship that has a lot of engines that can fly really fast, it will stop you from flying too fast. So here, to get in the ship, I don't think the ship has the ability to fly that fast, but if you go into build mode, actually, you should be able to see what its limit is. So right now, 902 kilometers an hour is its limit, so this is not going to be able to get going fast enough to burn. No ship will burn in atmosphere at less than 1,200 kilometers an hour. You could make a giant sail that's an entire L-core wide and stuff it full of rockets and ram it into the air as fast as you can, and it's still not going to blow up at less than 1,200 kilometers an hour. You cross that 1,200 kilometer an hour threshold, though, and you're going to start blowing up real fast. It's just sort of a magic starting point. So this ship here has 2.73 Gs of atmospheric thrust, which is good. It's not great given I don't have much in it, but it's good enough. And high altitude lift is 2.78. So basically my engines are reasonably strong, my wings are reasonably strong, and if I check my space engines, it's at 1.95. So this is not a powerful ship, but it is strong enough that I should be able to relatively easily escape atmosphere with it. So I'm going to want to do that real quick here. So I'm going to do sort of multiple demos in one here. So this is Arches. I'm currently on Haven, but let's say I wanted to go to Alioth and actually take my ship there. If I say view planet and open up points of interest and go to the District 6 Marketplace District 6. In the real server, this is basically the center of civilization. Everything is here. Everything is always here. And I copy the coordinates to my clipboard. Then here in Arches, I can just go paste. And then I hit Alt-1. Alt-1 and 2 navigate between your locations in your interplanetary helper is what it's called, but it's basically like your autopilot locations. I have everything set up so it saves some of my personal ones here, so I'm going to have to scroll past them. But if you didn't have that, Just hitting Alt-1 once would take you to the temporary one. And then you just hit Alt-4.
Throttle up and disengage brakes.
And if you've got your audio set up, it tells you what you need to do. You need to throttle your engine, disengage your brakes. So I'm going to hit Control to turn my brakes off. And I'm going to just mouse wheel up to turn my throttle up to 100%. She's going to go. Now, Arches is coded to handle ships that are reasonably strong, not super strong. So it's not going to try and just fly straight up, which is good because that would work. This ship is not strong enough for that. So instead what it's going to do is it's going to angle up at about 30 degrees and try and build up enough speed that my engines and wings combined can push me up past that threshold to escape into space. Now the threshold to escape into space is when your atmosphere hits 10%. So here, my atmosphere is currently at 33%. So that's basically how much air there is. It's the air. Think of that as the air thickness. So up here, the air is getting thinner and thinner and thinner. If you were actually in the ship, you wouldn't be able to breathe because the air is so thin at this point. And it has to break past that 10% point, and that's when the space engines can turn on. Now, it does have to break past that for long enough that the space engines can spool up and take off. And also, your space engines have to be strong enough that they can push you out. So right now here, I'm still at 0.9 Gs. So my space engines, it said I have like 2.8 Gs or something. So they're going to be able to handle this no problem. But if you only had like 1 G of space engines, then you would have to really get yourself out, to like lob yourself out into space such that you spend a long time in that 10% zone to let the space engines really kick you off. If you are really tight to the wire like that, I would advise not trying to autopilot, and what you need is a really shallow angle of inclination. So you need to get moving fast, sideways on the planet. And honestly, Arches is great for that, because if you hit Alt-6, that does altitude stabilization. So you can actually literally like stabilize out to be flying at a particular altitude. You can sort of get up to a point where you know you can still fly reasonably well. So maybe like 25% atmosphere or 20% atmosphere, and then hit Alt-6 and just sit there and build up speed. And it will continue to pitch the ship to keep you level so you're staying at about the same altitude. And if you stay there for long enough, you can build up a bunch of speed and then just hit Alt-6 to turn it off, and the curvature of the planet will actually bend away from you and you'll slowly angle up and leave out into space. That is my advice for how to handle it. If your ship is not handling getting out into space well, pulling that maneuver tends to work pretty well. Because basically then you're using your engines and your wings to give yourself that bit of lift to get out. And you're hitting this point where space engines can turn on at such an angle that you're going to end up spending a long time in that zone. If you just go straight up and you cross over it, even if you would get higher, if you just fall back down again, the space engines don't have time to spool up and save you. So you just go like, whoop, engines turn on, you fall back down. Whereas if you come out sideways, then it's like you come out and the engines turn on, and you've got this big arc out in space where the engines have time to spool up. And if you're flying manually, once you hit 0% atmosphere, I advise turn your ship straight vertical. Because basically you want all of that engine power pushing you away from the planet. Just you want it to counteract gravity as much as possible. That's if you're having trouble with it. If you're not, it doesn't matter. You can just get Arches to do it for you. So yeah, that's basically how to fly. There are other HUDs as well. Aviators, I believe, has some sort of autopilot function. I've never used it though. I find its interface to be kind of difficult to get into. My understanding is it was designed by an actual pilot, and so he's put a lot of effort into getting a lot of the instrumentation to match what you might actually see in an airliner, which is very cool, but also very opaque to me. I don't really understand it. The other big HUD right now is Albatross HUD. Albatross doesn't have any autopilot currently, although he's working on a basic interplanetary just to get you to
accelerating to target speed,
go to the other planet and then stop. Which is cool. Oh, yeah, here. Another thing with Arches, at any point when you're flying like this, it's trying to get as fast as it can go, but it doesn't really matter. Like, I don't need it to happen in 7 minutes. I can take a little bit longer. You see it says the trip counter at the top there. So if you just middle click,
Cruise
it cuts
speed
your engines
established.
and it lets you cruise. And now it's going to take 14 minutes instead of 7 minutes. I'm probably not going to let this finish one way or the other in this video because that's going to take too long. But yeah, now drifting in space, going at speed. The space physics is not too bad. There is a max speed, which is forced based on your mass, which doesn't really make sense. But the basics of like, you need adjusters in order to spin, and once you are moving, you're moving. You don't need to keep running the engines. So you see I'm going 13,095 kilometers an hour because I'm still closer to Haven. So Haven's pulling me backwards a little bit, so my speed is slowing down a little bit. But once I cross that midway point and I get closer to Alioth, then I'll start speeding up again as I fall in towards Alioth. So yeah, that makes sense there. Yeah, Albatross is really nice. It's a really pretty HUD. It doesn't have the autopilot features, so I don't use it as much because I really highly rely on these autopilot features, I'm not going to lie. But it looks real good. It's a nice HUD, and it functions well as well. Yeah, so I think that's going to cover it for this one. I didn't get too deep into the Lua end of things. I want to get more into that. Oh, there's also the emergency control unit. While I'm here, does the ship have one? I don't know if it does. Let me just get out. If you hit Control Backspace, it just ends whatever Lua is running. One thing at a time. So if you've got like 10 programming ports running, you'll have to hit it multiple times. But right here, I'm just flying the ship, so I can just go Control Backspace. Hang on.
System shutdown complete.
No. But then it turned on the emergency controller, so I do have one. An emergency controller in space, by default, will try and stop you. So as soon as I got out of my seat, the emergency controller turned on, and it started hitting my brakes. So that was that glowy effect that you saw, which is not what I want, because I do actually want to get over to Alioth at some point. But I just wanted to clear up a misconception about emergency control units. They're not really useful for emergencies. If the server crashes, if your computer crashes, if you get disconnected, they don't work. They only work when you get out of your seat, because it only triggers when you are leaving your seat, and all Lua is run on your own computer. So if you're not connected to the network when you're no longer in your seat, or when you go through that transition state of leaving your seat, then it doesn't trigger the Lua, and so it doesn't run. So like right now, if I were to get in the seat, and then when I get out of it again, if you look at my speed in the top right corner, I'm going 12,670.
System shutdown complete.
Starts plummeting rapidly because it's hammering on the brakes. So here, if I hop outside, you can see those brakes are going hard. So it's trying to stop me. But I can just hit Control Backspace. That will turn off the ECU. And now the brakes stop. Also note that trick. If you want to see the outside of your ship when you're in space, you can just go in build mode and just move around outside the ship. You can technically not be in build mode, and you should stay tethered to the ship as long as you're staying fairly close to it. So you can move around and hit control to brake. But this is risky because if you get too far away, the ship will just suddenly fly away from you. Something I've done for fun many times. But yeah, the gravity then only applies once you're actually like above a piece of your ship. So here we are. Back inside. And now Arches, because I don't have a data bank, doesn't retain where I was going, but I can just punch it back in and tell it to go again. I can update these. Some of these autopilot locations don't exist anymore.
Adjusting trajectory. Cruise speed established.
Because I don't care. Yeah, so the ECU, it's just a limitation of how they handle the Lua. It's unfortunate that it can't really save you from serious emergencies. I mostly use it for things like if I'm landing my ship in atmosphere, the emergency control unit by default will just try and land your ship, like it just tries to parachute land you. So if I am parachute landing anyways, I can just get out of my ship and let the emergency control unit handle it. So if I'm coming in at a marketplace and it's empty, if I don't have any like careful specific maneuvering landing I need to do, I'll just get out when I'm like 100 meters up still and just get off my ship and walk over to the market. just jump off of it. There's no fall damage, so not for a person. Your ship will take fall damage if it hits too hard, but you don't. So just hop out, jump down, go do whatever you're going to do. When you come back, your ship's landed. Handy dandy. Sadly, not so useful for actual emergencies, but it's real handy for that. I also use it for placing space cores. I made a special version of it so that when I get out of my ship, or when I get out of my pilot seat in space, if I have this particular version of it installed, it takes my ship and tries to level it out to the surface of the planet so that I'm perfectly flat with the planet, and then I can try and place a space core flat with the ship in order to then be flat with the planet. That's also a handy one. Yeah, okay. This went very long. At 50 minutes now, it looks like, so it's a little longer than the last one. But got some good information in there, covered some stuff from last time. I'm not sure what I'm going to do next time. Probably get into some Lua stuff. Maybe mining units. I didn't really touch on the mining units at all. At some point, I'm going to have to build an asteroid mining ship to show you guys that. Yeah. But we'll call it there for now, and I'll catch y'all next time.